Communal violence in India includes acts of violence by followers of one religious group against followers and institutions of another religious group, often in the form of rioting. Religious violence in India, especially in recent times, has generally involved Hindus and Muslims, although incidents of violence have also involved atheists, Christians, Jews, and Sikhs. There is also a history of Muslim Parsee riots. Despite the secular and religiously tolerant constitution of India, broad religious representation in various aspects of society including the government, the active role played by autonomous bodies such as National Human Rights Commission of India and National Commission for Minorities, and the ground-level work being out by non-governmental organizations, sporadic and sometimes serious acts of religious violence tend to occur as the root causes of religious violence often run deep in history, religious activities, and politics of India, along with domestic organizations. International human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch publish reports on acts of religious violence in India. Over 2005 to 2009 period, an average of 130 people died every year from communal violence, or about 0.01 deaths per 100,000 population. The state of Maharashtra reported the highest total number of religious violence-related fatalities over that 5-year period, while Madhya Pradesh experienced the highest fatality rate per year per 100,000 population between 2005 and 2009. Over 2012, a total of 97 people died across India from various riots related to religious violence. The world's average annual death rate from intentional violence in recent years has been 7.9 per 100,000 people. Ancient India. Ancient texts Ashoka-Vardhana and the Divyavardhana mention a non-Buddhist in Pundravarthana drew picture showing the Buddha bowing at the feet of Nirgrantha Janatiputra. On complaint from a Buddhist devotee, Ashoka, an emperor of the Maurya dynasty, issued an order to arrest him, and subsequently, another order to kill all the Ajivikas in Pundravarthana. Around 18,000 followers of the Ajivika sect were executed as a result of this order. Sometime later, another Nirgrantha follower in Pataliputra drew a similar picture. Ashoka burnt him and his entire family alive in the house. He also announced an award of 1 dinara to anyone who brought him the head of a Nirgrantha heretic. According to Ashoka-Vardhana, as a result of this order, his own brother, Vitashoka, was mistaken for a heretic and killed by a cowherd. The ministers advised that this is an example of the suffering that is being inflicted even on those who are free from desire, and that he should guarantee the security of all beings. After this, Ashoka stopped giving orders for executions. According to K.T.S. Saro and Banimadhab Barua, stories of persecutions of rival sects by Ashoka appear to be a clear fabrication arising out of sectarian propaganda. The Divyavardhana, an anthology of Buddhist mythical tales on morals and ethics, many using talking birds and animals, was written in about 2nd century AD. In one of the stories, the raising of stupas and viharas is mentioned with Pushyamitra. This has been historically mapped to the reign of King Pushyamitra of the Shunga Empire about 400 years before Divyavardhana was written. Archaeological remains of stupas have been found in Diorkotha that suggest deliberate destruction, conjectured to be one mentioned in Divyavardhana about Pushyamitra. The existence of religious violence between Hinduism and Buddhism in ancient India has been disputed. It is unclear when the Diorkotha stupas were destroyed, and by whom. The fictional tales of Divyavardhana is considered by scholars as being of doubtful value as a historical record. Moritz Winternitz, for example, stated, "These legends scarcely contain anything of much historical value." Medieval India. Historical records of religious violence are extensive for medieval India, in the form of corpus written by numerous Muslim historians. Durant states that Hindus were historically persecuted during Islamic rule of the Indian subcontinent. The total number of deaths of this period are usually attributed to the figure by Professor K.S. Lal, who estimated that between the years 1000 AD and 1500 AD the population of Hindus decreased by 80 million. Religious violence in medieval India began in centuries before the start of Delhi Sultanate, with the raids by Turco-Mongol, Persian and Afghan armies. It intensified during Delhi Sultanate, continued through Mughal Empire, and then in the British colonial period. Religious violence was also witnessed during the Portuguese rule of Goa that began in 1560. Muhammad bin Qasim. The earliest documented religious wars in India are from the 8th century, when Islamic armies attacked the Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms in the northwest parts of the Indian subcontinent, now modern Pakistan, and parts of Indian states of Gujarat, Rajasthan and Punjab. In the early 8th century, Muhammad bin Qasim and his army assaulted numerous towns, plundered them for wealth, enslaved Buddhists and Hindus, and destroyed temples and monasteries. In some cases, they built mosques and minarets over the remains of the original temples, such as at Dibal and later in towns of Naran and Sajusan. After each battle, all captured men were executed and the wives and children enslaved. 1/5 of the booty and slaves were dispatched back as comes tax to Hajjaj and the Caliph. Minor dynasties. The conflict between Hindus and Muslims in the Indian subcontinent may have begun with the Umayyad Caliphate in Sindh in 711. The state of Hindus. During the Islamic expansion in India during the medieval period was characterized by destruction of temples, often illustrated by historians by the repeated destruction of the Hindu temple at Somnath and the anti-Hindu practices of the Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb. As the Third Fitna, Fourth Fitna and other civil wars raged in Arab and Persian regions, and Sunni and Shia sects attempted to consolidate the positions. The religious violence in the western and northwest parts of the Indian subcontinent against Hindus and Buddhists was limited to sporadic raids and attacks. In the late 8th century, the army of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur attacked Hindu kingdoms in Baroda and Kashmir, and took many children and women as slaves. Shia Muslims and sympathizers were expelled by Sunni armies after these raids. Similarly, adherents of Ali expelled Umayyad sympathizers and appointees. About 986 AD, the raids and violence from Muslim army of Sultan Yamanid Mahmud and Amir Sabuk-Tigan reached Punjabi Hindus. After several battles, the Hindu king Jaipal sent a message to the Sultan that the war be avoided. The Sultan replied with the message that his aim is to obtain a complete victory suited to his zeal for the honor of Islam and Mussulmans. King Jaipal then sent a new message to the Sultan and his Amir, stating, "You have seen the impetuosity of the Hindus and their indifference to death. If you insist on war in the hope of obtaining plunder, tribute, elephants and slaves, then you leave us no alternative but to destroy our property, take the eyes out of our elephants, cast our families in fire, and commit mass suicide, so that all that will be left to you to conquer and seize is stones and dirt, dead bodies and scattered bones." Amir Sabuk-Tigan then promised peace in exchange for a large ransom. King Jaipal, after receiving this peace offer, assumed that peace is likely and ordered his army to withdraw from a confrontation. According to 17th-century Persian historian Firuz Jaipal refused to pay the ransom, angering Sikhs.There. An alternate account of an 11th-century historian states, instead of waiting for the ransom tribute, Emir Sikhs.There and his army then attacked the kingdom of infidel Hindus. Both historians then describe the religious violence included burning the Hindu villages and towns, massacre of people in numbers that Muslim historian Al-Utbi Tariq Yamani called beyond number, demolishing of idol temples, and the plundering of the wealth of the Hindu homes and king's treasure by Emir's friends and soldiers. Mahmud of Ghazni. Mahmud of Ghazni was a sultan who invaded the Indian subcontinent from present-day Afghanistan during the early 11th century. His campaigns included plundering and destruction of Hindu temples such as those at Mathura, Dwarka, and others. In 1024 AD, Mahmud of Ghazni attacked and destroyed the third Somnath temple, killing over 50,000 and personally destroying the Shiva Lingam after stripping it of its gold. The historian Al-Utbi narrated the violence as Mahmud of Ghazni made at least 16 raids into India against Hindus. Each campaign witnessed religious violence, killing of thousands of people, plunder, and Mahmud returning with Hindu slaves and loot. The lives of numerous Muslims and Hindus were lost. For his sixth raid of 1008 AD, the Hindu kingdoms of Ujjain, Gwalior, Kalinjar, Delhi and Ajmer formed a coalition to resist the attack by Muslim army of Ghazni. Hindu females sold their jewelry and put labor into providing war supplies. The Sixth War erupted in the fields of Punjab, where Ghazni troops had entered through Afghanistan. Thousands of Turk-Afghan Muslim soldiers were killed within the first hour. In the chaos of the battles, armies fled in different directions, and thousands of Hindus were hacked to death by the retreating army. In the 16th campaign, Mahmud raided Gujarat and Sindh region of South Asia, and destroyed Somnath temple. Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate, which extended over 320 years, began with raids and invasion by Muhammad of Ghor. The Sultanate witnessed a period of extensive religious violence in various parts of India at the hands of Sultan's army. The perpetrators were Sunni Muslims, and the primary victims were Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, as well as Shia and Sufi Muslims. Religious violence became state-sponsored with the start of Delhi Sultanate, and it continued through the Mughal Empire. Muhammad Ghori. Muhammad Ghori raided North India and the Hindu pilgrimage site Varanasi at the end of the 12th century, and he continued the destruction of Hindu temples and idols that had begun during the first attack in 1194. Qutb-ud-din Historical records compiled by Muslim historian Maulana Hakim Sayyid Abdul Hayy attest to the religious violence during Mamluk dynasty ruler. Qutb-ud-din The first mosque built in Delhi, the Quwwat al-Islam, was built with demolished parts of 20 Hindu and Jain temples. This pattern of iconoclasm was common during his reign. Khilji dynasty. Religious violence in India continued during the reign of Jalaluddin Firoz Shah Khilji and Alauddin Khilji of Khilji dynasty. Their army commanders such as Ulugh Khan, Nusrat Khan, Khusra Khan and Malik Kafur attacked, killed, looted and enslaved non-Muslim people from West, Central and South India. The Khilji dynasty's court historian wrote, riots and mutinies by Hindus erupted in various parts of the Sultanate, ranging from modern Punjab to Gujarat to Madhya Pradesh to Uttar Pradesh. These riots were crushed with mass executions, where all men and even boys above the age of 8 were seized and killed. Nusrat Khan, a general of Ala-ud-Din Khilji, retaliated against mutineers by seizing all women and children of the affected area and placing them in prison. In another act, he had the wives of suspects arrested, dishonored and publicly exposed to humiliation. The children were cut into pieces on the heads of the mothers, on the orders of Nusrat Khan. The campaign of violence, abasement and humiliation was not merely the works of Muslim army. The qazis, muftis and court officials of Ala-ud-Din recommended it on religious grounds. Qazi Mufassudin of Bayana advised Ala-ud-Din to keep Hindus in subjection in abasement as a religious duty, because they are the most inveterate enemies of the Prophet, and because the Prophet has commanded us to slay them, plunder them, and make them captive, saying, convert them to Islam or kill them, enslave them and spoil the wealth and property. The Muslim army led by Malik Kafur, another general of Ala-ud-Din Khilji, pursued two violent campaigns into South India between 1309 and 1311, against three Hindu kingdoms of Deogiri, Warangal and Madurai. Thousands were slaughtered. Halbid Temple was destroyed. The temples, cities and villages were plundered. The loot from South India was so large that historians of that era state 1,000 camels had to be deployed to carry it to Delhi. In the booty from Warangal was the coin or diamond. In 1311, Malik Kafur entered the Sri Rangam temple, massacred the Brahmin priests of the temple who resisted the invasion for 3 days, plundered the temple treasury and the storehouse and desecrated and destroyed numerous religious icons. Tughlaq dynasty. After Khilji dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty assumed power and religious violence continued in its reign. In 1323 Ulugh Khan began new invasions of the Hindu kingdoms of South India. At Sri Rangam, the invading army desecrated the shrine and killed 12,000 unarmed ascetics. The illustrious Vaishnava philosopher Sri Vedantadasika hid himself amongst the corpses together with the sole manuscript of the Srutaprakashika, the magnum opus of Sri Sudarsana Suri, whose eyes were put out, and also the latter's two sons. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was the third ruler of the Tughlaq dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate. The Tariq-i-Firoz Shah is a historical record written during his reign that attests to the systematic persecution of Hindus under his rule. Capture and enslavement was widespread. When Sultan Firoz Shah died, slaves in his service were killed en masse and piled up in a heap. Victims of religious violence included Hindu Brahmin priests who refused to convert to Islam. Under his rule, Hindus who were forced to pay the mandatory Jayut tax were recorded as infidels and their communities monitored. Hindus who erected a deity or built a temple and those who practiced the religion in public such as Nirakhand were arrested, brought to the palace and executed. Firoz Shah Tughlaq wrote in his autobiography, Timur's Massacre of Delhi, the Islamic Turco-Mongol ruler Timur's attack of India was marked by systematic slaughter and other atrocities on a truly massive scale inflicted, mainly on the subcontinent's Hindu population. Leaving the Muslim-populated areas aside, his army looted rest of the habitants. The Hindu population was massacred or enslaved. 100,000 Hindus prisoners were killed before he attacked Delhi, and many more were killed afterwards. Sikandar the Iconoclast. After Timur left, different Muslim sultans enforced the power in what used to be Delhi's Sultanate. In Kashmir, Sultan Sikandar began expanding, and unleashed religious violence that earned him the name Badshahan or idol breaker. He earned this sobriquet because of the sheer scale of desecration and destruction of Hindu and Buddhist temples, shrines, ashrams, hermitages and other holy places in what is now known as Kashmir and its neighboring territories. He destroyed vast majority of Hindu and Buddhist temples in his reach in Kashmir region, encouraged by Islamic theologian Muhammad Hamadani. Sikhs.There also destroyed ancient Hindu and Buddhist books and banned followers of dharmic religions from prayers, dance, music, consumption of wine and observation of the religious festivals. To escape the religious violence during his reign, many Hindus converted to Islam and many left Kashmir. Many were also killed. Sayyid dynasty. After the massacres of Timur, the people and lands within Delhi Sultanate were left in a state of anarchy, chaos and pestilence. Sayyid dynasty followed, but few historical records on religious violence, or anything else for that matter, have been found. Those found, including Tariq-i-Mubarak Shahi, describe continued religious violence over 1414 through 1423. According to the Muslim historian Yahya bin Ahmad, the Islamic commanders chastised and plundered the infidels of Ahar, Kur, Kampila, Gwalior, Siori, Chandawar, Etawar, Sirhind, Bale, Qatar and Rohtas. The violence was not one-sided. The Hindus retaliated by forming their own armed groups, and attacking forts seized by Muslims. In 1431, Jalandhar, for example, was retaken by Hindus and all Muslims inside the fort were placed in prison. Yahya bin Ahmad, the historian, remarked on the arrest of Muslims by Hindus. The unclean, ruthless infidels had no respect for the Musulman religion. The cycle of violence between Hindus and Muslims in numerous parts of India continued throughout the Sayyid dynasty. According to Yahya bin Ahmad, Lodi dynasty, religious violence and persecution continued during the reign of the two significant Lodi dynasty rulers, Bahlul Khan Lodi and Sikandar Lodi. Delhi Sultanate, whose reach had shrunk to northern and eastern India, witnessed burning and killing of Hindus for the religion in Bengal, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. In 1499, a Brahmin of Bengal was arrested because he had attracted a large following among both Muslims and Hindus with his teachings. The Mohammedan and Hindu religions were both true, and were but different paths by which God might be approached. Sikhs.There, with his governor of Bihar Azam Humayun, asked Islamic scholars and Sharia experts of the time whether such pluralism and peaceful messages were permissible within the Islamic Sultanate. The scholars advised that it is not, and that the Brahmin should be given the option to either embrace and convert to Islam, or kill. Sikhs.There accepted the counsel and gave the Brahmin an ultimatum. The Hindu refused to change his view, and was killed. Elsewhere in Uttar Pradesh, a historian of Lodi dynasty times described the state-sponsored religious violence as follows: Mughal Empire, Babur Humayun's Uri dynasty. Babur defeated and killed Ibrahim Lodi, the last sultan of Lodi dynasty, in 1526. Babur ruled for 4 years and was succeeded by his son Humayun, whose reign was temporarily usurped by Suri dynasty. During the 30-year rule, religious violence continued in India. Records of the violence and trauma from Sikh-Muslim perspective include those recorded in Sikh literature of the 16th century. The violence of Babur, the father of Humayun, in the 1520s was witnessed by Guru Nanak, who commented upon them in 4 hymns. Historians suggest the early Mughal-era period of religious violence contributed to introspection and then transformation from pacifism to militancy for self-defense in Sikhism. According to autobiographical historical record of Emperor Babur II-Babari, Babur's campaign in northwest India targeted Hindu and Sikh pagans as well as apostates, and an immense number of infidels were killed, with Muslim camps building towers of skulls of the infidels on hillocks. Baburnama similarly records massacre of Hindu villages and towns by Babur's Muslim army, in addition to numerous deaths of both Hindu and Muslim soldiers in the battlefields. In 1545, Mughal Empire under Sher Shah Suri led a campaign of religious violence across western and eastern provinces of the empire in India. As with theologians and court officials of Delhi Sultanate, his advisors counseled in favor of religious violence. Shaikhism, for example, counseled, "There is nothing equal to a religious war against the infidels. If you be slain you become a martyr, if you live you become a Ghazi." Sher Shah's Mughal army then attacked the Hindu fort of Kalanjar, captured it, killing every Hindu infidel inside that fort. Akbar is known for his religious tolerance. However, in early years of his reign, religious violence included the massacre of Hindus of Garh in 1560 AD, under the command of Mughal Viceroy Asaf Khan. Other campaigns targeted Qaita and Ranthambore. Maulana Ahmad, the historian of that era, wrote of the battle at Qaita Fort. Another historian, Nizamuddin Ahmad, recorded the violence during the conquest of Nagakit as follows: Jahangir Nuruddin Muhammad Salam was the fourth Mughal emperor under whose reign religious violence was targeted at Hindus, Jains and Sikhs. A companion of Jahangir, a Muslim historian, described the religious violence as Jahangir's orders to torture and execute Guru Arjan in 1606, is considered by scholars to be a turning point in Sikh history, after which Sikhs considered militancy and religious violence against the Mughal Empire as necessarily to protect the faith and loved ones. Violence against the Mughal Empire was thereafter viewed by the Sikhs as the only practical form of protest against religious persecution and Islamic orthodoxy. The religious violence between Sikhs and Muslims increased thereafter, and ultimately led to the formal inauguration of Khalsa in 1699 by the 10th Sikh Guru, Gobind Singh. Aurangzeb assumed power after arresting his father Shah Jahan, as well as eldest brother Dara Shikoh for his secular beliefs, and other blood relatives. Aurangzeb was a devout Sunni Muslim, and regarded his blood brother as a pestilent infidel. Aurangzeb put his brother on trial, found him guilty of apostasy, and executed him. He next arrested the children of Shikoh and poisoned them to death. The reign of Aurangzeb that followed witnessed one of the strongest campaigns of religious violence in Mughal Empire's history, with an estimated 4.6 million people killed. Aurangzeb banned Diwali, reintroduced Jizya on non-Muslims, led numerous campaigns of attacks against non-Muslims, destroyed Hindu temples, arrested and executed the 9th Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur. Aurangzeb issued orders in 1669 to all his governors of provinces to destroy with a willing hand the schools and temples of the infidels, and that they were strictly enjoined to put an entire stop to the teaching and practice of idolatrous forms of worship. These orders and his own initiative in implementing them led to the destruction of numerous temples, contributing to the list of temples destroyed during Islamic rule of India. The estimated number of temples destroyed during Islamic rule range from 80 campaigns to 60,000 total. Some temples were destroyed entirely, in other cases mosques were built on the foundations, sometimes using the same stones. Idols were smashed, and the city of Mathura was temporarily renamed as Islamabad in local official documents. Among the temples Aurangzeb destroyed included major Hindu pilgrimage sites in Varanasi, Mathura and Somnath Temple in Gujarat. In both cases, he had large mosques built on the sites. On some destroyed sites such as Kesavadeva Temple in Mathura, Aurangzeb ordered the construction of mosques as replacement. Towns and provinces became depopulated from the religious violence, and Aurangzeb on his deathbed lamented in writing that he had greatly sinned, and it should not happen that Muslims be killed and the blame for the death rest upon him. Sikh rule. After seizing control of Jammu and Kashmir, Maharaja Ranjit Singh appointed Gulab Dogra as the Hindu governor of Jammu and Kashmir. Dogra demolished the Jama Masjid of Srinagar. In 1837, Dogra suppressed the revolt of the Yusufzai tribe. Thousands of Muslim Pashtun tribe members were killed. Few hundred of captured women were sold as slaves in Jammu. Dogra raid of Yasin and Hunza. After acquiring Jammu and Kashmir through the Treaty of Lahore and Treaty of Kashmir, Ranbir Dogra led a major invasion of the frontier areas of Yasin and Hunza to punish Muslim rebels in 1863. General Hushiara Singh with 3,000 troops attacked the frontier with predominantly Muslim population. Thousands were killed during the invasion. Captured Jassanis were taken back to Srinagar for forced labor and all the women were included into the harems of Dogra soldiers.